Hi, I have PCOS, and if you don't know me, my name's Sarah, and in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly how I went from this 50 pounds overweight with no energy, battling extreme fatigue, struggling with hair loss so bad that I thought I was going bald, and no period whatsoever, to this, down 30 pounds and counting, in the best shape of my life with a regular period to prove it, and hair that's about to touch my butt. So before we dive in, this is exactly what we're going to cover: how I found out I had PCOS, all the crazy things that I tried to make it better that actually made it worse, and finally, what actually worked after 11 years of struggling with this damn syndrome. Just a quick disclaimer: this is not medical advice. This is simply me sharing my story with you to raise awareness around PCOS. If you are struggling with PCOS symptoms, it's important that you talk to your doctor or medical provider before you do any dramatic changes or anything like that. So, with that being said, let's dive in to how I lost 30 pounds and reversed my PCOS symptoms. To do that, I have to bring you back to how it all started. Like most girls with PCOS, I had no idea what the heck was wrong with me. For the better part of a decade, I questioned whether or not it was all in my head and if it was just me. Unfortunately, I know now that 70% of women with PCOS don't even know that they have it. They go undiagnosed, according to WHO. I first suspected there was something wrong around puberty, which is typically when the symptoms of PCOS first start showing up. In middle school, when all of the girls around me started to get their periods, I didn't. I thought it was odd that my period was missing, but that wasn't the worst part. I think the worst part was seeing all the other girls develop boobs and my chest stayed flat. All of my friends would go to the mall, they'd start shopping for the cutest bras from Victoria's Secret, and I didn't even need a training bra. I don't even need a training bra today. Back then though, I did not lose hope. I just kept telling myself, it's fine, I'm just a late bloomer. I went from 7th to 8th grade, no period, 8th to 9th, another year gone, and finally that summer, I got my first period. And I thought, okay, like, I got my first period, we're good, but then nothing, absolutely nothing. This went on for years, and when I got to college, I was questioning if I was ever gonna feel like a normal woman. On top of the missing period in high school, I started to develop this terrible cystic acne all over my face. It was so bad that I refused to leave the house without a full face of makeup, and I remember going to school and getting teased by the boys in class for wearing so much makeup, but I didn't know what else to do. At that point, my whole face was covered in painful cystic mounds, and I could not go anywhere without a full face caked on. It was not happening. The fact that I left the house was a miracle because honestly, there were days I was so self-conscious about my skin that I would refuse to go to soccer practice, to school, and I would cancel plans just because I was so embarrassed. Eventually, I had enough, and I asked my mom to take me to the doctor for help with my skin and my period. Leading up to the appointment, I was just desperate for some sort of help. When I finally got to my appointment, I opened up to my doctor, poured out my heart of everything that I was suffering with. And you want to know what happened? After I unloaded all of my symptoms, everything that I was struggling with, my missing period, my terrible skin, all of my concerns, he looked at me and said, "You're just athletic." At first, this was a relief. Like, I stopped being concerned about the missing period at that point because this medical professional was telling me everything was fine, and I was good with that. Like, I didn't have to worry about the logistics of having a period, dealing with cramps, or learning how to use a tampon, leaking through, like, in public. So I put my period out of my mind, and then my doctor at the time prescribed me a bunch of medication for my acne. I never went as far as Accutane, but I tried a ton of antibiotics, a ton of ointments. None of them worked, ultimately because my acne was hormonal at the end of the day. So that was the first time that I brought my concerns up to any medical professional. I wasn't actually diagnosed with PCOS at this time. As the years went on, I started struggling with more than just those two symptoms. When I started driving around 15, 16, that was when I started to experience extreme fatigue, and it would hit me hard, especially after meals. It would be so bad that I would be driving down the freeway. I would literally fall asleep at the wheel and wake up in another lane, and I would have to pull over to take naps in random parking lots just to be safe. This was an everyday thing, and because of the exhaustion that in hindsight was probably caused by insulin resistance, which is when your body is unable to cope with high blood sugar. So you produce more and more insulin, and as a result, you may experience these huge crashes of energy and extreme cravings on top of it. Because of the exhaustion, I developed a dependence on energy drinks. I would literally drink 2, sometimes 3 a day, and they weren't like the 0-calorie drinks that we have now. They were the Red Bulls with so much sugar and caffeine, and I would have to drink them just to function. Just to function, I would literally have to drink 2 to 3 energy drinks a day, racking like 300 milligrams of caffeine at 16. I also started to struggle with sleep problems, and I wonder why. Probably because I was exhausted all day and I would drink all this caffeine just to stay awake and get through the day. And then I would finally lay my head down to rest at night and couldn't sleep because I was just wired and tired, which probably just disrupted my hormones even worse. So that was just a time of super high stress in my life where I was in this vicious cycle of poor sleep, poor nutrition, because I was always running around to school, exhausted all the time. I would just grab what was convenient. I lived off of like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, cereal, and fast food back then. But by the time I got to college, I did turn a new leaf and started to get more health conscious. I got into the gym rat life, bodybuilding.com, eating like chicken and broccoli and protein shakes right after my workouts to preserve my muscles so that I didn't lose my gains. This actually did clear my skin so much, but I would suffer with these intense cravings that would hit so hard that I would eat everything in sight. And by everything, I mean my food, my roommate's food. I remember the uncontrollable cravings hit so hard that I was just scavenging for anything that I could find. And what did I see on my roommate's side of the room? All I know is that there was chips, there was candy, and within an hour, it was all gone. Obviously, I was so ashamed. I ran to the store to replace every snack that I ate, and I literally ate the replacements. So when my roommate got home, there was nothing. And that's just to show you like the severity of how uncontrollable the cravings are. I also thought it was odd that not only did I have these extreme cravings that no one around me struggled with, but I also had no sex drive as a college freshman, which was very odd, and no period. Still, which again, I still at this point thought it was convenient, but after my first year of college, I got in my first relationship, and this is when my low sex drive started to get in the way. When I did have intercourse, it would be really painful. So I decided to go to the doctor because it was probably correlated with my missing period. This was a new doctor that I went to see on the college campus. I told them my concerns, my painful intercourse, my disinterest in doing the deed, and my missing periods. And they basically recommended that I go on birth control. This is when I first started taking the pill. And that's when the real nightmare began. Because I had the complete opposite reaction that you're supposed to have on birth control. Normally, there's 4 weeks. 3 of those weeks, you are taking the medication, and the final week is when you are on the placebo week, which is simply a sugar pill with no medication, and that's when you're intended to bleed. Now, what happened to me was the 3 weeks of the medication, I was bleeding uncontrollably. And then when I finally got to the placebo week, the only time you're supposed to bleed, I stopped bleeding entirely. So I went back to my doctor and I'm like freaked out, thinking that I might just lose all of my blood because of this. And they assure me it's just my body working out the kinks. So I stay on the pill. And month after month after month, the bleeding continues. So I go in again and they tell me I just should try a different pill. So I go on another pill and the same thing happens. So at this point, I can't go on like this anymore. So I take matters into my own hands and I try the first thing that I tried to fix my symptoms. And that is the plant-based diet. I had been hearing all of these things, the forks over knives, plant-based revolution, got me going down a spiral, and I changed my whole diet. It was way too extreme. I was afraid to eat anything processed, even meat. And at first, it was great. My skin cleared up. I started losing weight that I didn't even know I had, and found myself down 20 pounds. I was so enthusiastic about my weight loss journey that I wanted to help others do the same, so I started working as a weight loss coach for Jenny Craig. Until my health took a turn for the worse. My hair started falling out like crazy. I started experiencing severe stomach problems to the point where I would bloat after every single meal and pretend like there was a baby in my stomach, unbutton all my pants until I got home and could just lay down. I was afraid to leave the house because I had severe diarrhea, and I started losing so much weight at this time that when I sat down, I felt all bones and it was uncomfortable. Like the backs of chairs would hurt my spine. My butt went from a little bubble to a pancake. On top of that, I started noticing like thick, coarse facial hairs along my jawline. Because of these symptoms, I did not want to leave my apartment. I took as many online classes as I could. I canceled any plans that I had and withdrew from socializing and spent the majority of my time in bed exhausted. And at this point, I realized like I needed help figuring out what was going on because I was scared it was something really serious. I went to a new doctor and unloaded everything that I was going through, all of my symptoms, and that's when I was first diagnosed with PCOS. It was the first time that I was learning about PCOS. I didn't know what it was at all. The doctor basically just said it's a hormonal condition. I'm going to have a hard time having kids, and that we needed to run some blood work and get an ultrasound to see if there's cysts on your ovaries. The doctor didn't find any cysts on my ovaries, but my blood work came back all messed up. My estrogen was at the level of a post-menopausal woman. Normally estrogen, and I'm going to read this just so I don't screw it up, but normally estrogen is between 30 to 400 picograms per milliliter. Mine was not nearly that, okay? Post-menopausal women who are not of childbearing age is 0 to 30, and mine was 7 at 20 years old. So after all my tests came back, the doctor again recommended that I go on birth control. And after my bloody nightmare before, I pushed back because I wanted to make sure that I heard all of my options because I was not about to go on the pill again. And they basically said that that was all that they had for me, that there's nothing else that I can do. There's no other way to fix my hormones. The pill is my only option. So I left there with a prescription that I never filled. It was ridiculous because after 8 years of fighting all of these symptoms, not knowing what was wrong, is it cancer? Am I gonna die? I don't know. Am I ever gonna have kids? Like, am I even a real woman? After all of this suffering, after all of these questions for years, I finally get answers. I finally figure out, okay, I have PCOS. To then be told, there's nothing else that I can do. Nothing changed. I wish that my story was unique, but unfortunately, millions and millions of women experience exactly the same thing because 1 in 10 have PCOS. 1 in 10 women. And that number is just growing. So if you don't want to take birth control, and you take the other option, which is not taking the pill, and leave your PCOS untreated, it only gets worse. After my diagnosis, life just went on. I finished college in the COVID era, was working remotely, started a high-stress corporate America job, and that's when hit the fan. I gained 50 pounds in a matter of 4 months. None of my clothes fit. I literally went from a size 0 to a size 2, from a 2 to a 4, from a 4 to a 6, 6 to 8, and 8 to 10. Like every single month, I needed a whole new wardrobe. I literally didn't recognize myself anymore. My face was puffy. My rings didn't fit. I had to loosen my belt to the very last notch. I still had no period, no sex drive. My relationship literally crumbled. And I lost all sense of who I was. It was literally my rock bottom. The only thing that saved me was a corporate wellness competition. My work had announced that we were gonna have a competition to see who could lose the most weight in 60 days. I took it. I was like, cool, I'm gonna leverage this opportunity to inspire me to make change. The competition was supervised by our work doctor, and basically they were going to take our starting vitals, weight, blood work, all this stuff, and then see who had the most improvement. But I was so embarrassed that I did not want to step on the scale in front of anybody. I hadn't been in the office in person since before I gained the weight, and I knew I was nearly unrecognizable. I was literally so embarrassed to see the number on the scale that I started the competition early. And I was so desperate at this point in my life, I didn't approach the weight loss in the healthiest way. I went on an extremely restrictive diet to get it done, and I do not recommend, I'll repeat, I do not recommend you do this. At the time, I'd come across a ton of stuff about this particular diet from Dr. Sean Baker, Jordan Peterson, and his daughter, Michaela Peterson. So I thought I'd give it a shot, and that was the carnivore diet. If you don't know, that's a diet where you only eat meat and drink water. Obviously not sustainable, but desperate times call for desperate measures. So at this point, we're 4 weeks out from the competition. I went on this extreme diet. I ate 1 to 2 pounds of meat every single day, just with salt and water, and I lost 15 pounds in the 60 days of the competition. There were some benefits. My energy stabilized. It didn't really increase. I didn't have extra energy to do things, but I was definitely not experiencing crashes in energy like I had before. My mood was really good. I was calm all the time. I built back a ton of muscle that I had lost before, and my sleep dramatically improved. For the first time in my life, I woke up feeling well rested. I was having deep sleep in shorter amounts of time. I'm telling you, 4 hours of sleep and I was good. But again, I don't recommend this diet. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. After a few weeks, I knew I couldn't do this forever. It just got in the way of social occasions. There were just some weird things that I started to experience. My hair loss severely worsened at that time, and I grew more and more hair follicles in my chin area, and still no regular period. And then that's when it all started to click, and it hit me. My hormones were chronically imbalanced because my lifestyle was chronically imbalanced. I was living in this world of extremes, going from the sad standard American diet to the bodybuilding meal prep to plant-based and then carnivore. Meanwhile, my body never stood a chance to find an equilibrium because it never had everything that it needed all at once. And I realized I needed to change something for good. That's when I stopped trying to lose weight. I stopped counting calories. I stopped trying to take shortcuts out of desperation to get my body back, and instead built a lifestyle to allow my body to adapt to it, that I could maintain. And I simply focused on the things that made me feel better and did more of that, and limited the things that made me feel worse and avoided those. And ultimately, over the next year, that's how my hormones resolved themselves, and that's how I was able to lose 30 pounds, get my period back, and grow out my hair longer than it's been ever. And I can truly say, after 11 years of battling PCOS, I have never felt better, had more energy, or loved my body more than I do right now. And over the past 12 months, I have been sharing everything that I've learned on my PCOS journey on TikTok, gathering tens of millions of views, helping thousands of women feel their best too. And that's exactly what I'll be doing on this channel. So if you have PCOS and want to know more about how I and thousands of other women are healing their symptoms, make sure you subscribe and I'll see you on the next one.